Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads, where one single decision could just dramatically alter everything that comes next? Or maybe you've seen someone, perhaps someone who seemed lost in despair, suddenly find this inner strength, a spark that just ignites defiance and inspires, well, everyone around them. Today, we are taking a really profound deep dive into one of the most, I think, powerful and truly transformative chapters in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Two Towers. It's a chapter simply titled The King of the Golden Hall.
It really is a pivotal moment, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting about it, I find, is that it's not a huge battle scene. It's not an epic journey across Middle-earth in the usual sense. Instead, the epic scale here is, well, it's all internal, isn't it? It focuses entirely on reclaiming willpower, reclaiming dignity, and real leadership. We'll be exploring how Tolkien just masterfully uses this intense confrontation and liberation, really, as a critical turning point. Politically, emotionally, I'd even say spiritually, for Rohan and for its king Théoden. It gives us this deep study in like how a broken spirit can be restored. It shows us that sometimes the greatest victories are the ones won inside ourselves.
That's exactly it, yeah. We've spent a lot of time looking through different analyses and commentaries on this specific chapter, and our mission today is really to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights, specifically for you, our listener. Think of this as maybe your shortcut to really getting why this moment is so critical, not just, in the grand story of Middle-earth, but as this timeless story about resilience, about how insidious manipulation can be, and about what legitimate power actually looks like. Okay, so let's unpack this. Maybe we should start by setting the scene. Tolkien paints it with such incredible detail. You have to imagine this long, grueling journey that Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli have just been through. This desperate, relentless chase after the Uruk-hai who took Merry and Pippin. And finally, after crossing these huge plains, they arrive at Edoras, the capital of Rohan. Tolkien's descriptions here are just so vivid, you can almost feel those sweeping green plains of Rohan stretching out.
Yeah.
And they lead your eye up to this hill, the Dwemerberg, and sitting right on top is the Golden Hall of Meduseld, gleaming, literally gleaming in the sun. It's an amazing visual. It speaks of ancient glory.
It truly is. And a really crucial insight here, I think, for anyone interested in storytelling or even just observing power dynamics. It's how Tolkien uses that imagery to tell two stories at once. He shows you the past grandeur and the present decay, all at the same time. It creates this immediate dramatic tension, this foreshadowing, without needing a single word of direct explanation. You see the brilliant architecture, this monument to a proud warrior past, a place built for kings, but there's this melancholy hanging over it. You feel it. The air around Edoras feels, I don't know, quieter, more somber than you'd expect for the heart of such a fierce kingdom. So that visual contrast, it sets the stage immediately. It hints that there's this rot, this political and emotional decay that's seeped into the kingdom, diminishing its spirit even before our heroes step inside. It builds this expectation of greatness, but then hits you with the reality of something, well, something diminished, neglected, like a beautiful lamp with the light fading inside.
And that immediate tension when they arrive just perfectly captures that feeling, that something is deeply wrong. I mean, imagine it. You're approaching this famous seat of power, a place where you'd expect honor, respect, especially for Gandalf, right? A wizard, and Aragorn, clearly noble. But instead, immediate suspicion, a stark demand, surrender your weapons, right at the gates. It's jarring, they're forced to disarm. Gandalf especially has to give up his staff, which is, a huge symbol of his power, his authority. They take it from him. It feels like a deliberate act of disrespect, doesn't it? Especially given Rohan's reputation for honor.
Oh, absolutely. That act carries immense symbolic weight. It's much more than just a security measure. It directly foreshadows the deep distrust, the corruption that's festering inside Medusel. It reveals that Rohan has been compromised from the inside out. The very fact that visitors like these, with urgent news, are met with such suspicion, such a blatant disregard for basic hospitality. It tells you everything about how fragile trust has become, even in a society supposedly built on honor and courage. It's a clear sign that something is fundamentally broken at the heart of Rohan's government. It suggests this environment where fear, manipulation, they're already ruling the day, eroding all the normal rules of respect. This challenge to Gandalf's authority and really to Rohan's own customs, it's not just inconvenient, it's a big flashing warning sign. It tells you the king's advisors are actively working against the kingdom's best interest. They're hostile to anyone from outside who might disrupt their control.
So the stage is set perfectly. for a really confronting encounter inside the hall. And when our heroes finally get inside, they find King Théoden, and it's shocking. He's almost unrecognizable. Our sources describe him as aged, yeah, frail, diminished, his eyes are dull, his voice weak. And this is crucial for you to understand, this wasn't just natural aging. It wasn't just the weariness of a long reign weighing on a good king.
Exactly. That's the tragedy of it. Théoden's condition, his decline, it was entirely artificial. It was a direct result of Saruman's poisonous influence, and it was channeled directly through his servant, his mole, Gríma Wormtongue. This was really a masterclass in psychological warfare, what we probably call gaslighting today. See, Wormtongue didn't use obvious magic, no brute force. Instead, he meticulously, carefully whispered lies into the king's ear, day after day, year after year. He twisted Théoden's perceptions. He magnified every small setback, every shadow of a threat, every sign of the king's own aging. He made this once-proud monarch see only weakness, only defeat, only inevitable doom for himself and for Rohan. He systematically isolated him too, pushing away loyal counselors like Éomer, his nephew, even his niece, Éowyn, creating this echo chamber where only Grimma's poisoned view could get through. It was this slow, insidious erosion of will, much more devastating than a physical wound, really, because it made Théoden complicit in his own downfall. It stripped him of his strength, made him vulnerable to Saruman's will. And the deep insight there, I think, is that the most devastating forms of control often don't need overt force. They work by systematically eroding someone's will and perception from the inside.
It's just heartbreaking to picture, isn't it? Théoden, slumped over, his will completely gone, his great kingdom just crumbling around him because he's inactive, literally unable to make a decision, unable to lead. Can you picture a leader so utterly trapped, caught in this web of despair and deceit, becoming this tragic living symbol of his own kingdom's decay? It's such a vivid, painful image, a warrior king reduced to a shadow, a puppet really, manipulated from afar.
And it's critical to remember this isn't just a personal failure for Théoden. It's a massive political and social catastrophe. It has these huge implications for all of Rohan. Because Théoden, as king, he embodies the spirit, the vitality of his realm, his paralysis, his inability to act. It just ripples through everything. The riders of Rohan, these legendary warriors, left without clear direction, their morale plummets. Crucial alliances start to fray because Rohan looks weak, unreliable. The people lose hope because their king offers no comfort, no inspiration, certainly no defense. And all this happens because their leader has been captured. Not by an army, but by a whisper campaign, a corrosive influence that ate away at his spirit from within. This kind of subtle psychological takeover highlights a really profound vulnerability in any leadership structure, doesn't it? It shows how easily even a well-meaning ruler can be undermined if their counsel is compromised, if their trust is misplaced. The consequences for a whole nation are just dire when the person at the top isn't really steering the ship, but is essentially, well, mentally imprisoned.
Okay, so if Theoden's decline was engineered, we absolutely have to focus on the architect of that torment, Gríma Wormtongue. Our sources are emphatic. They call him a master manipulator. But what does that actually mean in practice? How did he manage to wield such devastating power over a king like Théoden without any obvious magic?
Well, Wormtongue's tactics were insidious, and they were incredibly effective precisely because they targeted Théoden's deepest vulnerabilities. His age, yes, but also his past griefs, his legitimate worries about Rohan's future. He didn't command the king. He didn't openly defy him. No, instead, he constantly suggested, he insinuated, he fed the king this steady diet of despair and isolation. He'd take every minor setback, every shadow, every sign of the king's perceived weakness, and just blow it out of proportion. All while downplaying Rohan's strengths, undermining the loyalty of its true champions, like Éomer. He subtly encouraged Théoden's inaction, told him resistance was futile, enemies too strong, best to just conserve his strength. Which really meant do nothing. So Wormtongue wasn't just an advisor, he was a psychological weapon, perfectly calibrated to sap Théoden's will, make him passive, and make him subservient to Saruman's larger plans. He preyed on fear, on doubt, magnifying them until they just consumed the king's ability to think clearly, trust himself, or act decisively. The real insight from his methods, I think, comes back to that earlier point. The most devastating control often isn't overt force. It's the systematic erosion of will and perception from within.
It really makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? How do you distinguish between genuine, honest advice, even critical advice, which leaders need, and this kind of insidious manipulation, especially when the manipulator is so close, seemingly trusted, whispering in your ear day after day? It's a huge challenge for any leader, or really for any of us navigating relationships and information.
Precisely. And the insidious nature of Saruman's influence, coming through Wormtongue, lies exactly in that subtlety, its psychological foundation. It wasn't, a spell in the classic sense. No direct mind control. It was a slow psychological poisoning. It eroded the king's internal strength, making him believe his only option was inaction, surrender. And that form of control is often so much more dangerous than direct aggression because it works from the inside. It undermines your judgment, your self-belief, often without you even fully realizing the extent of the attack. It creates this psychological prison where the victim essentially chooses to stay locked up, believing there are no other doors. This particular story teaches us a really vital lesson, I feel, that the biggest threats to our own autonomy, our own will, often come not from outside force, but from these corrosive influences. The ones that slowly chip away at how we see reality, distorting what's true, what serves us, until we doubt our own ability to act.
Okay, so we've explored the depths of Theoden's despair, the mechanics of this awful manipulation, but the narrative takes this truly compelling turn. The question becomes, how do you break such a powerful spell, this grip of despair and manipulation? And this is where Gandalf's intervention comes in. It's dramatic, it's powerful, and crucially, this isn't just Gandalf the Grey anymore, this is Gandalf the White, resurrected, embodying this renewed power and purpose. He doesn't just walk into the scene as an advisor, he arrives like a force of nature, carrying the weight of a peak, like a spiritual cleansing.
Indeed. Gandalf's presence in Meduseld is, well, it's both profoundly symbolic and incredibly dramatic. His own recent rebirth, from Gandalf the Grey, who fell fighting in the Balrog, to Gandalf the White, it gives him this unparalleled authority, moral clarity. He arrives not just with wisdom, but with this palpable sense of renewed power. He represents light, hope, a beacon in that shadowy hall. And that enhances his ability to act as both, like you said, a spiritual cleanser, purging the darkness, choking Theoden, and also a political liberator, freeing the king from Saruman's grip. He brings this undeniable force of truth and light into a place filled with deceit and despair. He directly confronts Gríma Wormtongue. His very presence just challenges the shadows and makes the confrontation inevitable and powerful. It's this moment where a pure, unyielding will meets a parasitic, corrupting one, and the difference is immediate. Stark.
And the impact is immediate. It's visceral. Our sources describe Theoden being shaken from his stupor, casting off Saruman's influence like a heavy cloak. Hey, can you just imagine that? That instant, profound shift. One moment, he's this slumped, broken figure, eyes glazed over with despair. The next, it's like a heavy veil is just torn away, revealing the true king underneath. Strong, clear-eyed. It's a breathtaking moment of liberation.
The transformation is so striking, so instantaneous, because Gandalf's words, they aren't just advice. They're declarative. They're transformative language, packed with authority. They actively shape reality within the story. He confronts Théoden directly, yes, but he also shames Wormtongue, exposing him, and that effectively breaks the psychological hold. Théoden doesn't just physically stand taller, it's a complete restoration of his will, his dignity, his sovereignty. His voice, which was a feeble whisper, now rings with the authority of a true king. His eyes regain their sharpness. This pivotal moment serves as such a powerful reminder, doesn't it? How despair can absolutely enslave you, trap you in inaction and misery. But hope, courage often sparked by an external force like Gandalf speaking truth to power, can restore not just physical strength, but the very essence of who you are, your purpose. It's the awakening of a spirit that everyone thought was lost, a profound act of liberation, both mental and spiritual.
And Tolkien presents this as a rebirth. He makes this really clear parallel to Gandalf's own resurrection. What's the deeper significance of drawing that parallel? Linking the wizard's return with the king's awakening, like they're two sides of the same coin of renewal.
That connection to the archetype of rebirth is incredibly significant, and it's deeply rooted in myth and literature, particularly that ancient motif of the wounded king. You see it in legends across cultures, right? The Arthurian fisher king, whose suffering makes his land barren, or other folk tales where the leader's health, their vitality, is just intrinsically linked to the land's well-being, to its prosperity. So Théoden's decay, physical and mental, isn't just personal. It's a visible sign of Rohan's fading strength, its dwindling hope. His healing, therefore, isn't just a personal victory. It directly mirrors, and it foreshadows, the healing and restoration of Rohan itself. As a powerful narrative device, it shows how the spiritual, the moral state of a leader can literally affect the destiny of an entire kingdom. Both Gandalf and Theoden go through this profound change, this metamorphosis. It signifies a turning point where light starts pushing back the darkness, not just personally, but on a grand political stage.
So, if we look beyond Middle-earth for a moment, what lessons can we maybe draw from this about overcoming despair, personal or collective, especially when we feel trapped or influenced by negative forces in our own lives?
That's a really important and, I think, deeply relevant question for all of us. The lesson seems to be that even in the darkest times, when despair feels just overwhelming, when our agency seems gone, there's always potential for rebirth, for rekindling hope, self-direction. Théoden's journey shows that this isn't always an internal lonely battle. Sometimes It needs an external catalyst, a voice of truth like Gandalf's, a renewed sense of purpose, or maybe just a loyal friend to shake us out of it. And what's fascinating here is that this rebirth isn't just personal for Theoden. It's a catalyst. It creates this massive ripple effect. His revival immediately reinvigorates not just himself, but the morale of his people. It galvanizes his army, and ultimately it reshapes the entire political landscape of Rohan. It shows the incredible transformative power of true leadership. And it offers this really inspirational thought. Even when all seems lost, hope and courage can restore not just one person, but ignite a whole collective resurgence. It reminds us our personal struggles often have impacts far beyond ourselves.
And once he is freed from Saruman's influence, what's so striking is how Theoden just wastes no time. He doesn't hesitate, doesn't wallow. He immediately shifts into action. He transforms right before our eyes from this passive victim into an active, decisive leader. It's not just recovery. It's like a declaration of war against despair itself, a clear affirmation of his kingship.
Exactly. That immediate, decisive shift into action is such a critical demonstration of true, awakened leadership. He doesn't pause for self-pity or even take time to adjust. No. Right away, he summons his riders, those legendary warriors of Rohan. He starts the hard but vital process of preparing Rohan's defenses. He delegates authority to people he trusts, loyal figures like Yomer. He begins planning for the crucial battles ahead. This is that pivotal moment, shifting from internal struggle, from being trapped in psychological torment, to external proactive action, recognizing the threats and rising purposefully to meet them. It signifies his full return to sovereignty, not just over himself, but over his kingdom, restoring faith, restoring order. His first acts are about protecting his people. It shows that real leadership isn't just making decisions, it's inspiring confidence, providing direction, especially in crisis.
And the symbolic weight of that immediate transformation for the people of Rohan, you just can't overstate it. The king who was dormant, a symbol of their own fading hopes, suddenly becomes this vibrant embodiment of resilience, decisive leadership, unwavering resistance against tyranny. It must have been an incredibly powerful statement to everyone in Rohan, restoring their faith in their king and in their kingdom's future.
This brings up a really important point about inspiration, doesn't it? And its role in leadership. Theoden's transformation isn't just about his personal freedom, it's about providing this tangible, living beacon of hope for a whole nation. His decisive actions, his renewed energy, they instantly transmit purpose and courage throughout the realm. They mobilize a people who were really on the brink of despair. And this intervention, this whole scene, it isn't just about liberating the king personally. It lays crucial groundwork for the huge battles to come, battles that will decide the fate of Middle-earth, like Helm's Deep. It really underscores the profound strategic importance of what might look like just court drama on the surface. But it reveals it as a vital foundation for the bigger conflicts, for solidifying alliances. I mean, without Theoden's awakening, Rohan might well have fallen. And the whole war effort against Saruman, and eventually Sauron could have just crumbled, potentially changing history entirely.
Now, let's turn to the fate of the master manipulator himself, Gríma Wormtongue. Our sources tell us he's unmasked, revealed as a traitor. But the outcome isn't necessarily what you might expect for such a deceitful, corrosive character, especially maybe in fantasy, where villains often meet a swift, definitive end.
Yeah, and this is where we really see Tolkien's nuanced moral vision coming into play. A complexity that often gets missed in simpler good versus evil stories. Wormtongue is exposed, right? For his treachery, for the awful influence he had over the king, over the kingdom. But he isn't immediately struck down. Instead, Theoden gives him a choice. Leave the Golden Hall, abandon your post, or face swift justice for your crimes. Theoden, in his new clarity and wisdom, chooses not to go for immediate, vengeful retribution. It's not a simple black and white revenge moment. It reflects this deeper ethical thinking. A chance, maybe, albeit a dark one, for Wormtongue to choose his own path, even if that path, as we know, leads him further into villainy. It shows a kind of restraint from the good side, maybe, a desire not to stoop to the enemy's level, to allow consequence rather than immediate annihilation, even for someone so vile.
That's a really fascinating point. Why do you think Tolkien chose that path? Instead of a more, definitive, immediate end for Wormtongue, what does it maybe say about justice or consequence in Middle-earth? Especially when you contrast it with the sort of swift justice we often see in other fantasy tales.
I think it says a lot about Tolkien's understanding of evil, of free will, and maybe the long arc of consequences, rather than just immediate payback or easy redemption. While Wormtongue is spared execution right there by Theoden, his expulsion is definitely not a pardon. It's a clear cleansing of corruption from Rohan's heart. That's essential. It prepares the kingdom for its renewed purpose, for the battles. But it also leaves the door open for him to return as an enemy, which of course he does later, aligning himself even more closely with Saruman. So this nuanced approach suggests this ultimate justice isn't always about immediate, satisfying punishment. Sometimes it's about removing the poison from the system and then allowing the individual's path to continue, even if it's a downward spiral leading to their own eventual ruin. It emphasizes that while you can purge corruption from a government, the corrupted individual still has their agency. They can keep choosing their path, good or ill. It's a moment of accountability, yes, but without outright vengeance, leaving room for future consequences that are often, arguably, more profound than just a quick death.
It shows the complexity of moral choices, even in a fantasy world.
So this deep dive isn't just about the sequence of events, the plot points. It's about these powerful, timeless themes that Tolkien just masterfully weaves throughout The King of the Golden Hall. Let's try and unpack some of those because they really do resonate far beyond the pages of a fantasy novel. They offer insights into, well, the human condition itself.
Yeah, definitely. A key aspect to consider first is how Theoden's transformation works as this potent metaphor for corruption versus renewal. It's a really universal message, isn't it? About breaking free from manipulation, from despair, overcoming those forces, internal or external, that try to diminish us, tell us we're weak or doomed. Theoden's journey from that bent, broken figure to a defiant king, it symbolizes the capacity for any person or even any society to resist those corrosive influences, to find the inner strength to fight back, rebuild, reclaim their agency. It's a powerful testament to the resilience of the spirit, especially when it's under deliberate psychological attack.
It feels remarkably relevant today, doesn't it? How often do we see that struggle between corrosive influence and the desire for renewal? Playing out in our own lives, maybe, or even on a bigger scale. In politics, in media, social movements, it feels incredibly current, even though it was written decades ago.
It absolutely is. We're constantly faced with choices about which narratives we let shape us, shape our actions. And that leads directly into another core theme this chapter highlights so brilliantly, the power of counsel. You have Wormtongue's poisonous words, right? Meticulously chosen to instill doubt, fear. And then you contrast that sharply with Gandalf's wisdom, which cuts through the deceit with truth, with compassion, urging the king to remember who he is, what his duties are. One aimed to destroy, to dismantle the will, the other aimed to enlighten, restore, rebuild courage and purpose. It just highlights the critical importance of who we listen to, whose voices we allow into our inner circle, and how those voices can either build us up, guide us towards clarity and strength, or completely tear down our will and distort our view of reality.
So given that contrast, what does this all mean for us then? What kind of counsel should we be actively looking for in our lives? And how do we even begin to discern it amidst all the noise, the conflicting info, the, often self-serving agendas we seem to face daily?
That raises such an important question about critical thinking, about personal discernment. We have to cultivate that ability, don't we? To evaluate the source, the intent behind advice. True counsel, like Gandalf's, it encourages agency, clarity, growth. It challenges us to rise up, to act with courage, with integrity. False counsel, like Wormtongue's, fosters fear, paralysis, dependence, and ultimately despair. And this chapter also beautifully illustrates the theme of leadership reborn. Just like Gandalf, who was given this new, purer purpose after his fall, Théoden goes through a symbolic rebirth. He reclaims his essential role as protector, as king. This theme speaks to that profound capacity within individuals, even when they seem broken or lost, to rise again, to shed their past burdens and fulfill their true destiny, their purpose. It's a real testament to the resilience of the human spirit, finding its way back to core values and responsibilities. And underlying all of this, as always, really, in Tolkien's work, is that enduring central theme, hope against despair. This chapter just powerfully demonstrates that hope isn't just passive wishing. It's an active force. It's a choice.
A conviction that can rekindle even in the absolute darkest moments, emphasizing unwavering resilience against overwhelming odds. It's a vital fuel for action, for resistance, and eventually for the triumph of good.
And beyond the compelling story, the profound themes, Tolkien's just masterful craft shines through, doesn't it? He blends this deep mythic resonance with gripping political drama in a way that really elevates the story to something timeless, universal.
It's truly a masterclass.
Yeah.
What's particularly compelling here, I think, is how Theoden's renewal echoes that timeless archetype of the wounded king. This motif, it's deeply rooted in ancient legends, right? Celtic tales of the Fisher King, aspects of King Arthur. It posits this profound, almost mystical link. The ruler's health, their vitality, is tied directly to the land's well-being, its prosperity. So when the king is sick, diminished, so is the kingdom. Fields might lie fallow, people suffer.
Theoden's recovery, therefore, isn't just personal. It's a necessary step for Rohan's own restoration. His awakening symbolizes the awakening of the land, its people. It grounds the story in this deep mythic tradition that gives it a universal resonance far beyond just fantasy. It connects Middle-earth to the enduring wisdom of human storytelling across ages.
And then there's Tolkien's dialogue. Just unparalleled. Our sources really highlight Gandalf's rebuke of Theoden stern, yes, but also compassionate, noting it carries the weight of both poetry and prophecy. How does that elevate the scene, beyond just a verbal exchange or a plot point?
Oh, the dialogue in this chapter is absolutely crucial. It's such a powerful narrative tool. It's not just exposition, not just argument. It's declarative, transformative language that actively shapes reality within the story, Gandalf's words. Things like a just mind, but it sees not always well, or his direct challenge, your counsel is poison. They aren't just persuasive. They're imbued with this moral, spiritual authority that literally breaks Saruman's psychological chains. The poetic quality of the language, too rich with alliteration, archaic phrasing, adds immense weight. It makes the words feel ancient, powerful, almost like incantations of truth. And at the same time, those prophetic undertones suggest this moment is part of a much larger, unfolding destiny for Middle-earth, aligning Theoden's choice with the fate of all the free peoples. It demonstrates the profound power of truth, spoken with conviction and with a deep, even if sometimes harsh, love. The power to heal, to inspire, and to fundamentally change the course of events. It's the kind of dialogue that just sticks with you, resonates long after you've heard it.
And finally, let's talk about the setting itself. Meduseld. The Golden Hall. Why is that physical space equally important to the story's impact? It's definitely more than just a backdrop, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. Meduseld isn't just a building. It's a potent symbol, almost a character in itself. Its name, the Golden Hall, speaks volumes about Rohan's proud heritage. History, valor, kingship, celebration. Yet when our heroes arrive, the descriptions are of a hall that's tarnished, filled with shadows, its golden roof dulled by neglect. Directly reflecting the king's diminished state, the physical space mirrors the king's internal struggle, the kingdom's decay under Wormtongue. It's like the hall itself is holding its breath, just waiting. And then, when Theoden awakens, when the corruption is purged, when the windows are thrown open to let in the light, the fresh air, the hall itself seems to breathe again. That cleansing of Meduseld, airing it out literally and metaphorically, it's intrinsically linked to the cleansing of Theoden's mind and the kingdom's destiny. It provides this tangible manifestation of the spiritual and political rebirth that's unfolding, showing how even physical spaces can reflect and contribute to the bigger story of triumph over despair.
So we've journeyed through Theoden's really remarkable transformation today. From a king trapped by despair, by insidious manipulation, to this decisive leader defiantly preparing his people for war. This deep dive into the King of the Golden Hall has really shown us how a chapter, even one mostly without battlefield action, can be immensely powerful, depicting that profound reclaiming of willpower, of dignity, and of true, inspiring leadership.
And that transformation, it truly stands as one of Tolkien's greatest character arcs, doesn't it? A really poignant movement from shadow into light, from despair to resolute defiance. It's a testament, I think, to the idea that even the most seemingly insurmountable burdens, psychological, political, can be lifted, and that true strength often emerges from moments of profound vulnerability. This chapter powerfully underscores the huge influence individuals can have on history, not just through fighting, but by choosing hope over despair, by rising to meet challenges, by reclaiming their own agency, their purpose. It's a story about a nation reawakening because its king reawakened.
Yeah. This deep dive into the King of the Golden Hall, it offers so much more than just a key plot point in a beloved fantasy epic. It's a really profound look at the true nature of leadership, the insidious, often subtle dangers of manipulation, the liberating power of truth, and the enduring strength of hope, especially when it's reignited in even the darkest times.
So considering Theoden's journey, from being mentally enslaved by that whispering Wormtongue to being awakened by a direct, truth-telling Gandalf the White moment, it makes you wonder, perhaps, what unseen Wormtongues might be whispering doubts or despair into our own ears, or maybe into the collective conversations we have every day. And what Gandalf the White moments, what acts of truth, of courage, of genuine connection are needed to shake us from our own stupor, to help us reclaim our own agency, our purpose, whether that's personally or as a community.
That's definitely something to think about. Take some time to consider that. The lessons from Middle-earth, as they so often do, resonate far beyond its borders, offering these timeless insights into the human condition and that constant battle for clarity and for hope.
Me